Hello and welcome to to a blunt throwback. That's right, we're debuting a brand new-ish show here on the Blunt Lemons. Okay, so it's more like a rebrand of the Dwell Cocky show, but hey, at least it's something. That said, with the much hyped Spider-Man PS4 coming out tomorrow, I thought our inaugural, episode, we would look at the Ultimate Spider-Man for the original Xbox. Released in 2005 as a direct successor, not quite sequel, to the much-loved Spider-Man 2 game. Surprisingly, I'd never played it despite loving the previous game and the character. So, to capitalise on that sweet search traffic and to play a game I've never played before, let's get to talking about my experience with the Ultimate Spider-Man. Oh, and spoilers, by the way.
Look out! Here comes the Spider-Man!
So first things first, while I love Spider-Man superheroes in general, I'm not much of a comic book reader. I find them a little hard to get into with so many issues and interlocking story over different series. As a result, I was at best very unfamiliar with the Ultimate Spider-Man universe and lore. As a result, the story and world of the game simultaneously surprised me, confused me a little, and spawned a lot of questions as the game builds itself not only as a continuation of that universe, but also that universe circa 2004. I'm sure the questions could be resolved by reading the comic book, or let's be realistic, reading the Wikipedia synopsis of the plot, but why do that when I've got a YouTube audience to ask instead? So here are the questions. Do people know who Spider-Man is, or does Peter just kinda not care? He swings around in plain clothes just outside his house, and in this boss fight has a superpowered brawl like a couple of miles from his house.
You're just gonna stand there?
Thinking about it.
Does S.H.I.E.L.D. deal with that sort of thing? Does he have a good relationship with S.H.I.E.L.D. for that matter? He seems to hate them, but they seem to like him.
Peter, come on, kiddo, wake up.
What are you doing here?
Come on, get up.
Why can't you keep this electric guy you're supposed to be keeping in prison? And that lady, the silver lady that captured Eddie the other day. Why couldn't she?
Peter, you need to call...
I need to quit getting almost killed by stupid people is what I need.
I was happy to see Johnny Storm turn up, but it does raise a lot of questions in respect of the level of destruction that's happening in New York. Wouldn't he turn up at some point? He's just waiting up there to race me. For that matter, wouldn't the Fantastic Four also turn up when literally dozens of people are murdered not that far from their house? Also, is the game considered canon to the series or like an alternate universe version? It'd be pretty cool if it was canon, but pretty annoying for comic book readers as it seems to contain a fair few revelations for the characters. Again, these questions are probably answered by knowing the universe or just googling it. It could also be questions that the game itself raises that are unrelated to the comic, but hey, that's what you guys are for. However, while that said, I really did like the game's story and universe as a whole. As someone who likes comic book characters and stories, it was cool to see S.H.I.E.L.D., Silver Sable and Spider-Man all in the same game universe. And as someone who mainly interfaces with these characters through games, movies and television shows, Sony has preconditioned me to think Spider-Man's universe is something separate to the wider Marvel universe. It's one of the many reasons I loved Spider-Man Homecoming. This is the sort of thing I'm hoping to see out of Spider-Man PS4. They've already confirmed the presence of Doctor Strange's base and Avengers Tower, so I'm hoping for a more modern version of what this game tries to do with its universe, and hopefully one that doesn't bill itself as a continuation of a comic book I've not read. As somewhat of a sidebar to the comic book nature of the game, I just want to talk about the art style for a wee bit. The game uses a cel-shaded art style with very stylized character models and environments to make the game look more like the comic book that it's continuing. This even extends to the cutscenes, which are all very well realised as a moving comic book. This gives the game a very distinctive look and has aged extremely well, especially when compared to Spider-Man 2, which went more for a photorealistic, accurate look. To pull back the veil for a few seconds, this was going to be a Spider-Man 2 video until the game crashed on me and lost 3+ hours of progress. Needless to say, I've learned to say it way more often in these videos from now on. To see how much better this game looks with a more timeless art style really impressed me. To me, it really proves that a strong art style can compensate for a limitation in hardware. Spider-Man 2 aged very poorly in the visuals department, while this game, to me, still looks extremely good. The city seems a little sparse, and it's clear the game is running on older hardware, but it really is carried on its art style.
Look out! Here comes the Spider-Man!
Now for something I'm much less positive on. As you might expect from a game based on Spider-Man, the game has a fairly large amount of combat involved. The main problem is that with all my time in the game, I'm still not entirely sure how it works. As Spider-Man, the only way to avoid damage by my perception, and also hit enemies, is to jump and use the kick button to send Spider-Man bouncing up and down in an almost uncontrollable manner. It's either that or be hit constantly doing ground combos. It makes the combat into somewhat of a chore. Sometimes enemies could block. Yeah, I never really knew how to get around that. Spider-Man also has both a kick and a punch. The punch seems to be worse, so I use the kick, but the exact difference I don't really know. Venom, on the other hand, I think is meant to be more of a combat-focused character with long and short-range attacks. Again though, the short-range attacks seem to make me take much more damage, while the long-range attack could get multiple people in the same attack, so the game just turned into me mashing the Y button until everything was dead. The camera doesn't help either. The camera locks onto enemies and bosses and freaks out if you jump or do the standard jump kick attack. This became so very annoying in the Silver Sable boss fight, playing as Spider-Man specifically, as the game locked onto her instead of her minions and kept me jumping at her instead of them. Also, the less mentioned about this little infuriating death, the better.
No. I was actually looking forward to fighting. This is a spectacular disappointment.
I have to go back.
The camera, specifically in boss fights, would continue to screw me into taking damage I didn't need to, especially if I was Venom. The best way to avoid damage as Venom is, by my experience, was doing the super jump. This, however, combined with the locked-on camera, would make just horrifically disorientating encounters. I tried slowing down the fights to keep track of the bosses, and ended up just taking more damage anyway. The Green Goblin fight, for example, seems trivial on the surface. Run around and jump when a fireball is coming for you. In practice, the camera is annoying and makes it difficult to circle and time the jumps correctly. However, if you unlock the camera, you can time the jumps in a much more precise manner, but you can't tell when to actually attack him. This just makes the whole boss fight an annoying experience. There's also a massive lack of checkpoints in the fights, which makes failure all the more grueling. At the end of the day, the combat just isn't that fun, and is actively frustrating most of the time. Despite my annoyance, it wasn't really a deal breaker on the game, as I was enjoying the story and the art style in the city overall. No, there was something I found infinitely more annoying than the combat.
Look out! Here comes the Spder-man!
No, the most infuriating part of the game by far were these chases. More often than not, if there's a boss fight, it's preceded by a boss chase, where the game gives you a meter indicates how far you are from the boss as they get further away from you in the chase. The objective is to keep within a certain distance of the boss until the game decides the chase is over. Sometimes the enemy attacks you as you go, and sometimes they pause what you're doing to save some civilians. The civilian saving usually requires you to alternate tapping the triggers to lift some debris off the person in question. This wouldn't be too much of a problem if it wasn't so damn fiddly. However, the enemies will also attack you while you're doing this, making it so much more annoying. Trying to keep the meter in the green as the Green Goblin attacks you proved to be more than a little annoying and frustrating.
Simple lesson, don't touch fire. Okay, everyone out of the pool. Yow! That's gonna leave a mark. Bane is bad.
That was annoying, but the real annoyance for me comes as these sections increase in speed. To begin with, it's quite novel and cool to just chase a villain through the city. By the time you get to the final Venom chase, however, the enemy moves at such a speed that they're almost as fast as the bloody Flash. One small mistake or climb a building slightly too slowly, with no predictable wall running, I might add, means that instant failure followed by a restart of the whole sequence. It gets worse when you have to control Venom during these chases. Compared to Spider-Man, Venom has a much more limited traversal moveset, as he is the more combat-oriented character, which is fine. However, when you ask me to chase Electro through the city, it becomes incredibly annoying. Get too close, and he blasts you away as well. Look, I get the game is meant to get harder over time and the challenge is meant to increase, however it seems just a little bit too punishing. Once I'd figured out it was much quicker to web-zip everywhere as Spider-Man, it became a little bit more manageable as a problem, as most of these are undertaken as Spider-Man. I do wish I could figure out how to make Spider-Man wall run, as that would have made the traversal a lot more fun and a lot smoother. Really, the only truly rage-inducing chase was the last Venom chase. While the others proved to be a huge annoyance, it was by far this one chase that made rage course through my body uncontrollably. Seriously, almost quit during that chase. How come when I control Venom, he's a slow, lumbering, inaccurate hunk of annoyance, but when he's in the hands of the game, he nimbly moves through the city at the speed of light, swinging between buildings with ease.
Look out! Here comes the Spider-Man!
That really concludes my thoughts on Ultimate Spider-Man. The game is good, and as a result there's not really a huge amount to riff on, and in general a fine successor of sorts to Spider-Man 2. What it really suffers from is being old. The open world feels empty and devoid of activities to do. It feels dull compared to the almost two-packed worlds of modern games, and I can't really hold that against the game. The combat is annoying compared to the more fluid and engaging systems of today, but that would have been fine for the time. Also, the story is good, and I'm just not familiar with the Ultimate Spider-Man universe. But I can tell it has a much more competent story than many of the Spider-Man games have had. As I said before, this is the sort of game that I hope Spider-Man PS4 can be story-wise, folding a larger Marvel universe into a Spider-Man story, which this game's story did incredibly well. So, let's hope I get that. Moreover, I just really want to play a modern Spider-Man game, with a combat system that's good and a jam-packed world to explore, and let's not lie, Spider-Man PS4 definitely going to provide that for me. Well, that's it. I had fun with this one for the most part, despite some very annoying crashes and some annoyances with the game itself. To be real for a moment, I'm happy to be back and hoping to do these more often. I'm not going to be beholden to a schedule, but let's just say I'm working a couple of these to come out so that they come out more often and more consistent than the Dwell Talkie Show ever did. So if you want more of these or want to see our videos in the future, subscribe and hit the bell icon as well. So with that said, let's have, I don't know, emo Spider-Man dances out.
Together.